Man, so what's happening, y'all? I haven't done a video longer than 60 seconds in like a long time, but it's been crazy. Tax season's fun, right? And I'm pretty sure a lot of you people out there are getting these things. Good old-fashioned W-2. So, let's talk about these things for a second. And let's go box by box and just talk about what your W-2 has on it, what's important to you, because understanding these things, well, will just help you understand where the money that you make goes a little bit. And it'll kind of help you understand how taxes work. But let's just dive right into it before I just ramble on forever and waste your time. So right here, you've got standard W-2. I don't know how well you can see this. So let's just start box by box, and we'll start with the simple stuff. So as you can see here, right here, we've just got your employer's name, the person who you work for, an address, and then your name and address. So we got this person right here, works for Amazon Incorporated on blah blah Avenue. John Doe's the employee, he stays on Left Right Drive. And then this number up here is just an identification number that IDs your company to the IRS. And then the Social Security number of John Doe is also on here. So those are two main boxes, nothing important here. But let's get to the stuff that you guys care about, right? So you come over here to box 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6, and you got some numbers. So what we can see here is in box 1, these are your wages. This is basically the gross pay. Maybe that's the wrong term for it. But this is basically what you were paid throughout the year for your time worked. Now, one thing I really want to point out to you is the difference between box 1 and box 2. And this will kind of have us jump around W-2 a little bit, but that's okay. So you got box 1, you see your wages of $50,000, right? And then if you take a look at box 2 and if you take a look at box 1, box 3, and box 5, you can see that box 1 has $50,000 in it for your wages, and then you can see that box 3 and 5 have $55,000 in their wages, okay? So what's the difference? Why is there a difference? Well, number 1 is what you're basically going to report on your federal income tax return, okay? And then box 3 and 5 are basically what you earned before your payroll deductions, okay? This will come into play once we start talking about box 12 down there. So anyways, basically box 1 are your wages that you're going to be taxed on, okay? Box 3 and 5 is actually what you earned gross for that year. So that's a better explanation. Yeah, I said that better. So you can see here that this person grossed $55,000 by box 3 and 5, but they're only going to pay tax on $50,000. Why is that? Let's just real quick jump down to box 12 down here. And you can see that box 12 actually has 4 separate columns, and in reality it could have like a lot of columns here, but most people have like 2 or 3, maybe 1. But in box 12 here, these are going to be deductions against your pay for your taxable income. So you earned $55,000 gross, and then you had $5,000 worth of some type of taxable deduction that shows up in box 12. So then you can see that 55 minus this 5 will give you this 50. And things that end up going in box 12, okay, are things like your 401k contributions, any type of like employer healthcare plan that you have, which you have to pay premiums towards, can go there. HSA deductions and things of that nature will end up being shown here in box 12, okay? So these are pretty much kind of like your tax deductions against your income. So like, when you hear me or other people say things like when you contribute to your 401k, it's a tax deduction. But if you've ever stared at your tax return for long enough, you're not going to see a deduction on your tax return for your 401k contributions. That's because it's already done for you on your W-2. So in this instance, and there's a code here that specifies like what it was, 401k or HSA, and I don't remember the codes off the top of my head, but it'll look something like letter D, code D, and then it will show you the dollar amount. Okay, so like this could be a $5,000 contribution to your 401k, could be a $5,000 contribution to an HSA. Things of that nature are typically what go in box 12, all right? And then as you can see, like I mentioned again, your gross are these two boxes, and then this is what you grossed less your payroll deductions, 401k contributions, contributions to HSAs and stuff like that. Box 1's what you're taxed on. Box 3 and box 5 is what you grossed. Follow? Okay. So then you move over here, and now we're going to talk about the taxes. These boxes right here, 2, 4, and 6, are the taxes that were withheld from your paycheck. Now, one thing that's really interesting is that this tax right here, box 2, this is your federal withholding. This is what you file your tax return every year for. Just box number 2 right here. This is what you file your tax return for. Okay? Box 4 and box 6, these are the FICA taxes that everybody pays who has earned income, and there's no avoiding these. What's interesting about these boxes and these taxes right here, your employer must withhold boxes 4 and 6 from your paycheck. Box 2, on the other hand, is your option. If you want, it doesn't matter if this says, if you gross $55 or $60, $100,000, if you want, you can make box 2 0. This is completely up to you. This box right here is where your refund comes every single year. The more money that you have them withhold right here in box number 2, the larger your refund will typically be. And then box 4 and box 6 are the FICA taxes that have to be withheld from your check. So, and these lines correspond to each other. So box 4 is 6.2% of your gross wages. And then box 6 is like 1.5% of your gross wages down here for, what's that, Medicare? Medicare. So this is your Social Security FICA tax, 6.2%. And then this is your Medicare FICA tax, about 1.5% of your gross wages. And then box 2 is what you told your employer to withhold for you, okay? When you go out and you start a new job, every employer, if you're an employee, will have you fill out a W-4 at the beginning of the year before you start. And that W-4 tells them how much to withhold right here in box number 2, okay? So if you claim 0 when you fill out that W-4, this box will have more money in it. If you claim 1, 2, 3, 4, however many deductions, dependents you're claiming, then this will go down. And if you want, you can make box number 2 0. You can take home the portion of your full $50K that you can, and then you can just square up with them at the end of the year if you wanted. Or you have them withhold the right amount, and then this is what you're filing your tax return for right here is box number 2. Side note, you might have heard me even say something along the lines of like, you share an article about how, like 40% of Americans or something like that don't pay any federal income taxes. When you hear things about federal income taxes, what you're talking about is box number 2. We are not talking about box 4 and box 6. We are talking about box number 2. These are federal income taxes. And just because you have dollars in box number 2 does not mean that you pay federal income taxes for that year. Because there's, in many events, that a person in this gets all of this money back right here in box number 2. Many events that this happens. And occasionally they'll get more back than what's here in box number 2. Okay? And it has nothing to do with this or this. Your federal tax return has everything to do with this. So that's basically the main boxes that everybody cares about on the W-2. Number 1 is the wages that you're taxed on. Number 3 and number 5 are your gross pay. Number 1 is your pay less payroll deductions that show up in either box 12 or box 14. I'm not going to dive too deep into box 14 because it gets weird as hell sometimes. And sometimes your employers will throw stuff in there that like nobody knows what the hell they even mean except for the person who printed the W-2. But that's basically what you got going on. And you can see right down here, like these are fringe benefits. I just threw that in there for an example. These right here, like, so if you have a company car and you use it for personal reasons and your company tracks your personal mileage, you're going to get fringe benefits. This will be included in this $50,000. this will be included in this $50,000. And like I said, don't worry too much about box 14. I've also seen medical health insurance premiums in box 14 versus box 12. Box 14 is very similar to box 12 in the sense that it can have deductions for your payroll in it, but mainly they come from box 12. And then right here is basically just if you had a retirement type contribution, this just checks the box as to what that contribution was for. So you can see, there's a box for third-party sick pay, there's a box for a retirement plan, and then statutory employee. Most of the time, if you see something in box 12 and you're contributing to a 401k, you're going to see that retirement plan box checked. So that basically covers the basics of the W-2 and the form that you get every single year. And it's like, what am I even staring at, right? Gross pay, what you got paid after your deductions, 401ks, healthcare plans, stuff like that. Box 2 are the taxes you had withheld from your pay. Box 2 is what you file your tax return for. Box 4 and box 6 are your FICA taxes on your gross pay before your deductions. And then across the bottom here is basically your state and local stuff. So you'll have the state that you worked in, just that ID number for your employer. The wages, typically box 2 and this one, I can't tell backwards, will always match. Typically these two always match. $50,000 is taxable on your federal income tax return from your W-2. $50,000 is going to be taxable on your state of Michigan tax return. And then you move over here, and this is how much state taxes you had withheld from your paycheck, similar to box 2, except it's down here, and this is for the state. When you file your state tax return, this is what you're going after. This is the money that you get back. Just like on your federal return, this is the money that you get back. And then you got your local taxes, and then you've got local stuff right here. So these are the monies that you earned in your local municipalities. So for instance, Grand Rapids, coded GR. You earned 50 grand. Typically, all these three boxes match. Some people don't have city taxes. I would say more people don't have city taxes than do. But your city stuff will go here. When you file a city tax return, here's the taxes that you're going after. This is how much city taxes they withheld from your check, and then just that city code right there. So that is basically your W-2. That's that form that comes in every year that shows you how much money you made on it. And those are pretty much how the taxes withheld from it works. I hope that helps in understanding, the whole W-2 stuff a little bit.